Well, the U.S. Census is taken every 10 years, and the government uses that data to decide things like how to distribute money, lay out legislative lines, and to just get a better understanding of who we are. It's our ages, our ethnicities, our incomes, our genders, all that kind of stuff gets collected. And so while the last census was in 2020, as we know, a lot can change in a little amount of time, which is why every so often the Census Bureau releases new estimates based on new information. And what they see when it comes to Idaho, well, is more than 100,000 have taken up residence in the Gem State since 2020, putting us at about more than 1.9 million people in Idaho. We'll likely break that 2 million barrier by the end of this year. But Boise is actually losing people for the second year in a row, dropping from an estimate of 238,000 in 2021 to 235,000 in 2023. It looks like they're going to other places in Ada County, like Kuna, which jumped by 4,000, or Star, which grew more than 5,000 over that same time period, and Meridian, which has ballooned more than 15,000 in 3 years. Nampa also seeing a jump, with nearly 13,000 more calling themselves Nampans than did in 2020, or Nampons, I think. How much of this increase in population in cities outside Boise is directly related to the shrinking population of Idaho's capital city? And why is Boise losing ground when it comes to people inhabiting its ground? Andrew Bartline took those questions to some of the people still living in the City of Trees.
If it's a city for everyone, then what's a young adult to think when the market prices you out?
Yeah.
Kim Phillies from a long line of Idahoans.
Things are so enriching.
That's her mom.
And it makes me want to come downtown
Sue.
all the time just to look at those places.
While the matriarch claims Garden City,
I do sense that there's even more growth going out in that direction.
the offspring sprung.
And I'm at the University of Houston in Texas.
Upon homecoming,
This is new.
she found Boise to be a city for everyone who could afford it.
It goes back to housing. I am a little freaked out by how expensive this place is.
It's a problem known to city leaders and addressed Thursday at Mayor McLean's State of the City address.
That we are friendly for business and that we support opportunities for all of our residents to build healthy, stable lives.
Mayor McLean announced a $15 million investment to create a new supportive housing fund. It should create 230 supportive housing units for the most vulnerable populations. It's just a dent in the city's overall goal to build 27,000 total units by 2031.
You know, affordable living is
Boise's Anthony's home.
a sticky topic, but really important to kind of pay attention to.
He's lived in the capital city since 2016, and census data suggesting a shrinking city doesn't sit right.
I really don't think it's the reality from my experience. Obviously, you can't get the cart before the horse, but I'd love to see the city grow up big. I remember when it seemed sleepy.
But the city concedes it is losing population, and you don't have to look far to find them.
The traffic and congestion feels so much worse to me going out towards the suburbs, from Garden City through Eagle, Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell.
But it still doesn't feel like Boise's anything but booming.
I keep seeing more and more people everywhere I go.
And her daughter,
But I can't sense that Boise is shrinking in any way,
they see each other
because I'm frequently leaving Boise.
only on occasion.
You know, I think you lose something in a community when the people that love the community and work in the community can't afford to live there.
Because a city without its people is just a chunk of land.
We count on one another.
And more Boiseans are now counting on somewhere else.
Affordable housing is everything.
The city of Boise knows about this census data going back a few years. It's about a 2-year trend now. They say the city's not sure what is the main reason behind that population shift, and they add, quote, "We are committed to understanding and addressing the needs of our residents, especially when it comes to creating more housing that meets Boise budgets, investing in childcare, transportation, and parks, and recruiting, I should say, high-quality jobs for our city." That is a very good synopsis of what we heard at the State of the City last night, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. And it all comes back to that affording to be able to afford to live here, because maybe we're losing population, but that money keeps coming in. People with more money moving into that can afford it, and those prices are still staying up there. So people who, are getting pushed out that can't, obviously.
Yeah, or people that live in a Meridian but work in Boise,
Right.
still doing that commute. So
that's why she says it seems like there's a lot of people still here, but they're just driving here.
Yeah, exactly. I think that might be a big part of it too, that the actual functional city, what you see socially, probably doesn't feel like it's getting smaller at all.
No, just spreading out a little bit. All right, thanks, Andrew. Okay, so Idaho is supposed to be up to 2 million people by next year, but as you know, a mass influx of outsiders from places like California and other states into Idaho, it's not a new thing. In fact, it was a thing even before the state of Idaho was a thing. That might be obvious for most of us, since only native Nez Perce can truly lay claim to being, quote, real Idahoans. What drove the first wave of outsiders into early Idaho? Well, that would be the search for gold. Thousands of people flooded into the area in and around Idaho City, which was originally called Bannock City because of those who were there first. As for the first white men into the area, they laid claim to the first gold claims in the creek that now bears the name of one of them. There was a time when Idaho City was the largest town between St. Louis and San Francisco, thanks to the discovery of gold in the Boise Basin in the 1860s. The story goes that discovery and the incoming prospector population can be attributed to two men. George Grimes and Moses Splawn made their way to the Boise Mountains in the summer of 1862. And just days after arriving, on August 2nd, Grimes and Splawn struck gold. It was a newfound fortune cut short, at least for George Grimes, because apparently that gold was found on the hunting grounds of the Bannock tribe, and they weren't exactly thrilled about the prospect of more prospectors invading their land. So they attacked the Grimes party, killing George. Splawn explained the story to a local paper about facing what seemed like 20 guns fired in their faces at the top of a hill. He said Grimes fell just as they reached the top. His last words were, "Mose, don't let them scalp me," and thus perished a brave and honorable man at the time when he stood ready to reap his reward. We carried him to a prospect hole and buried him amid silence. And together, they worried whose turn would be next. Buried in that unmarked grave, a creek, a mountain pass, and the surrounding area memorably bear the name of George Grimes. Well, Grimes' grave was left unmarked for more than 60 years, until 1923, when a dean at the University of Idaho helped add a grave marker to the place, to the Grimes Pass Cemetery, which is near Idaho City. Well, several years after the gold rush washed out in the Boise Basin, cities started springing up across the lower elevations. By 1900, 10 years after Idaho became a state, the population in the Treasure Valley was just above 19,000. Most still lived outside city limits on more than 1,600 farms covering more than 113,000 acres of land. That's according to the Idaho State Historical Society. And all of that was thanks to 568 miles of canals and irrigation ditches bringing water to those farms. One of those places that planted itself on the map is now mostly known as one of the valley's main roads on that map. Ustick was once on a timeline to become its own independent community until water, time and growth like time, can roll by undeterred, only altered sometimes by the path in front of it. A change in direction can change a lot. Water is what made the Treasure Valley productive and livable, and led to communities popping up all over.
If you're in a barren landscape, the next obvious thing is you need to find access to water.
In the 1870s, a canal system began to take shape, a series of ditches to take river water where it wasn't. Think the New York, Reidenbach, and Settlers.
And by 1891, there were nearly 50 miles of canals that brought Boise River water as far west as Nampa.
Which meant homesteads and farms sprouting in spots south and west of the river.
We have Boise, who, central location, and we have a town of Meridian that had started to grow in 1893. And this Ustick property sat kind of in between the two.
160 acres claimed by Jacob Clemens in 1894, who filled them with orchards.
Anytime you have a product, you have to have a way to bring that product to market.
Back then, that meant investing in railroads.
And so the Boise Interurban Railway had a loop that took people and goods from Boise along State Street to Collister and to a number of points, and then back down along what we consider Ustick Road, back down into downtown Boise.
One of those investors of the Interurban Railway was a gentleman named Dr. Harlan P. Ustick. That's him in the top hat at the Golden Spike ceremony.
So this is where this name, Ustick, comes into the picture.
An ear, nose, and throat doctor from Ohio, Ustick also had an eye for business. And he had visions of building a town. So Ustick acquired some of Clemens Acres and laid out his plans and the plats by 1907.
So what we're looking at is the original plat of the Ustick town site.
And people were buying into Ustick's idea.
We clearly see the Boise Valley Railway line following this route.
You got a train track that runs through, you got water, now you got people interested in buying there. What came next?
And so he ended up opening a bank, and he served as president of a bank in town.
However, Ustick wasn't much of a banker, and it closed after just 3 years.
But they were also able to secure a mercantile store.
And even the orchards found success in the form of a cider house.
There was a Baptist church that opened and built a building. There was a Ustick school, and it really did operate as a true individual community.
A community that was cut short, much like Dr. Ustick himself.
And in 1917, he was visiting some of his mining interests in Yellow Pine, and he died of a heart attack.
After that, nothing could stop the life being squeezed from his town.
You know, by 1918, we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and we're in the middle of World War I, and things are changing. And interurban railways are no longer as critical because automobiles have become the primary mode of transportation. Boise is growing, Meridian is growing.
And becoming actual cities, while Ustick tried to stick with its roots.
And Ustick never elevated to that level, in part because they always were rural. They always maintained that rural profile, and they never let that go. Eventually, those orchards became subdivisions, and eventually the city of Boise annexed those subdivisions into city limits.
That was in 1995. Nearly 30 years after, you can still see some of what Ustick envisioned more than 115 years ago.
The original bank building and the original mercantile building are still standing.
And so are the consequences of change.
Change happens all the time, but change also leaves breadcrumbs. And if we can take the time to watch for that change and to see what has been left behind, there's always a story that we can learn from that.
All right, since we began the 208 back in January of 2020, we have been trying to bring you interesting stories and slices of life from all over the state. And sometimes that takes us to places we can't really pronounce properly, which is why we have a segment we like to call, How Do You Say It? For example, Idaho, because of its original residents. They have a lot of places out there with Native American names, and a few that don't really roll off the tongue so easily for, longtime Idahoans or newcomers alike. Back in January of 2021, when going places really wasn't encouraged, we decided we would crash a Zoom call with our sales team to find out how you say this place where the Nez Perce first welcomed the Corps of Discovery. There's a tiny town in Clearwater County with a name that's a bit...
Can you see that?
I can.
Unclear.
I would say wipe.
Good guess. It's a good guess.
Weyate?
Weepy, is that how you would say that?
Yeah, I think it's either weepy or wipey or weep. I don't know.
You know who does know? Those that live and work there, like David Thompson. How do you say that?
We say it, we-ipe.
We-ipe.
My wife and I, we moved up here in 2008. We thought it was going to be this beautiful word like Waiape, something to that effect. And we get here, turns out that it's just we-ipe.
Just we-ipe? It's just the place where Lewis and Clark first met the Nez Perce in 1805.
We-ipe.
But its origins are unfortunately just as unclear. And what we-ipe means, also up for debate. It's also not the only question in this small town. Like, why is there a gorilla on the water tower? And how old is their mayor, the longest-serving mayor in Idaho, who's been in office since 1968? We'll save those for another day. But the name,
we-ipe.
Well, it even has its own YouTube video.
The name of the town is We-ipe, Idaho. Not Weepy, Wipey, or We-wipe. We-ipe, Idaho.
All right, we got it. But that also leads us to our next question. What do you call yourselves?
A lot of us call us we-ipers.
We-ipers?
We-ipers.
Wow, okay. I'm sure that's been messed up a few times.
That is for sure.
Because we've had people call this wipey. So that would make you guys wipers if that were the case.
We wouldn't want to be the wipers.
Well, the meaning of the word we-ipe has been hard to nail down. It either has something to do with how old the place is, maybe something to do with a spring of water nearby, or it could be the camas flower, according to weipe.com. As for the 8-foot gorilla on the water tower, that used to be the high school mascot from 1927 until 1970, and then the middle school mascot until 1989. Timberline High School is now the Spartans, but the town, they wanted to keep that gorilla for posterity. The mayor, Norm Stedman, we talked about, he actually did retire in January of 2022 after 53 years in charge of We-ipe, making him the longest-serving mayor ever in Idaho, which shows you can't really wipe out We-ipers very easily. Okay, so there's another small town up north, just outside another small town of Cottonwood, who has been stuck with a name it didn't want for almost a century and a half. The town and the story began in the 1880s, with the first settlers being German Catholics, which is why, alongside a once thriving sawmill, it's also home to the oldest church on the Camas Prairie, where services began in 1887. Just one of the few little-known facts as we're getting to know and how to say Cooterville or Cuterville.
Hello, Cooterville. Just 1 moment, please. Did you try Rodanas? That's down in Cottonwood?
Apparently we're on hold because, well, I don't know why.
Hello, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Is this Linda?
Yes, this is.
Where are you, by the way?
Do you know where Cottonwood, Idaho is?
Yes.
Or you know where Grangeville is?
Yes.
I am 6 miles east of Cottonwood.
All right. What's the name of your town?
Cooterville.
Cooterville, not Cuterville.
Cooterville.
Do you know how the town got its name?
Yes, I do.
How?
It was supposed to be named Cutherville, Kuter, and then when they took it to Mount Idaho to record it, it was spelt wrong. It was spelt Cooterville, and nobody wanted to pony back over there and change it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What's going on in Cooterville today?
Quite a few people came for lunch, some beer drinkers, but we don't have anything outside of the church and the cemetery.
Wait, hold on. You have a church, you have a cemetery,
and the bar.
And that's you.
You can get married, drink, get drunk, and get buried all in the same mile.
That sounds like a great place. And how many people live there?
About 26.
Wow, and you're one of the 26.
No, I go home at night, makes it 25.
Yep, she makes it 25 when she leaves for the evening. Nobody wanted to make the trip to change the name to make it what it's supposed to be. All right, there's a little bit of that who cares mentality in Cooterville today. Linda told us she has lived in Cooterville, or outside of it, I should say, for 26 years. And for the past 22, she's owned and operated the pub and it's called the Pub Grub in Cooterville. Stop by. Her bar, though, doesn't have a computer. She doesn't have a cell phone, which is why we had to speak to her over the landline phone. Still, that didn't stop her from earning Businesswoman of the Year back in 2015.
Hopefully the seedlings for your garden or your other patio plants are hanging in there okay. I know the winds have been really consistent on the stronger side today, and even some of those gusts, again, being on the stronger side. We have potential in the Magic Valley to see those gusts reach 50 miles an hour. So far, we've fallen short of that, but 50 miles an hour is where we typically start to see damage, so less than that is pretty good. And so as we look across the horizon, I want to point out that with these winds, looks like we are seeing some dust kick up, so we're likely seeing a little bit of visibility issues, or changing at least, with all of these windy conditions. So here's where the wind speeds are right now. You can see in the teens for many valley locations. The exception to that is the Magic Valley, where they're above 20 miles an hour. And there is a difference between the wind speed and the wind gust. Wind speed is very consistent. Wind gust is a brief sudden increase of the wind speed. So as we look through for the rest of the evening, just know in the Treasure Valley area that we will start to see the potential for some of those stronger gusts decrease. So, but still plan on the winds if you're heading out to dinner, or if you've got other late night plans. You can see a lot of that sticking around until the later evening hours. Good news is that we are expecting that to change tomorrow. So we get a little bit of a break from the wind, and we also get a bit of a warm up as we go into Sunday. The winds come back, and those temperatures dip back down. Monday, they go up a little bit more, closer to 70 degrees, but you can see still staying on the comfortable side and below average for this time of year. So as we go into tomorrow, great opportunity for some of those outdoor plans rather than Sunday, because that's when the winds come back and temperatures will be cooler. Mountain areas, we will start to track the chance of some afternoon showers as we go into the weekend, but for valley locations, we're staying dry until the midpoint of next week. All in all, winds sticking around, temperatures staying comfortable, so your 7-day forecast is looking pretty good.
To answer the question why Boise is shrinking in the latest census numbers, Roger has this idea. He lived in Seattle during the 80s and watched almost exactly what I see in Boise today. Elderly who had owned their homes free of debt for many years lost those homes. They couldn't afford property taxes. Homeless grew to unmanageable proportions. And he asks, is this the future we want to see for Boise? Meanwhile, Sean asks, suggests rent control, make developers create 10% low-income housing with each building they erect, put the brakes on luxury units. Boiseans can't afford this. Unfortunately, the legislature has taken away any ability that local municipalities have when it comes to rent control, rental fees, application fees, any of that stuff. Gone over the last couple of years. They've taken that all away. Not allowed to happen in Idaho. All the people I see leaving Boise can be found at Shields or maybe in line at In-N-Out Burger, says Mike. Did you call us Nampa people Nampons? Just want to make sure I heard that correctly. If you did, thank you for the laugh. That's somebody who's from a proud part of Nampa, Nampans. Also, Liz didn't know that term. I thought this was common knowledge. Aren't Nampons called Nampons? You live in Nampa, you're a Nampon, right?